Ever feel like you're wrestling with website layouts? Trying to get them to look exactly how you pictured them in your head.
Oh, tell me about it. It's a constant struggle.
Well, today we're diving into CSS Flexbox, and I have a feeling it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, Flexbox really is a breath of fresh air when it comes to front end.
Okay, so we've got all these articles here about Flexbox, so let's break it down. First up, Flex containers and Flex items. What are those all about?
So imagine you're building a house. The Flex container is basically your foundation. It defines that space where everything else is going to go. You set an element as a Flex container with display.flex.
Okay, so if my website is like a house, then the Flex container is like the floor plan, setting that basic structure.
Exactly. And just like you place furniture on a floor, each piece of content in your container, whether that's headings, images, paragraphs, they all become Flex items.
So any direct child of that container element automatically becomes a Flex item.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets kind of interesting. That whole Flexbox influence, it's not automatic for elements further down.
Oh, now you got me curious.
So let's say you've got a div, right?
Yeah.
And it's a Flex item inside your main container. Now, if that div has more elements nested inside of it, those netted elements, they don't automatically become Flex items themselves. Unless their parent, that inner div, also has display. Flex applied to it.
So it's not enough to just be within the main container. The direct parent also needs that display. Flex for it to, inherit those Flexbox powers?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's like a direct line of inheritance, right?
Yeah.
Each generation needs to be told, hey, you're a Flex container or you're a Flex item.
Gotcha. So we've got our foundation set, our Flex containers ready to go. What's the first thing we can do with these Flex items? The articles mentioned something about Flex direction.
Flex direction, yeah. That's your control panel for basically dictating how your layout flows. You want those Flex items to line up in a row or stack up in a column. That's what Flex direction is for.
So this is how we can ditch those old school floats. Just create rows and columns without all the hassle.
Exactly. Need a classic, horizontal navigation bar, flexdirection.row, done. Vertical sidebar, flexdirection.column. You're all set.
I can already feel the power. No more battling with floats. This is awesome. But something tells me there's even more to it than just rows and columns, right?
Oh, definitely. And this is where it gets even more interesting. Remember how we were talking about Flexbox influence being generational?
Yeah, with the nested elements needing their own display. Flex.
Right. So Flex direction plays a key role there too.
Sure.
Picture this. You've got that row of Flex items, flexdirection.row. Now, within one of those items, you want to create a vertical stack of elements.
So like a horizontal navigation bar, but then one of the menu items, when you hover over it, expands to show sub-items vertically.
Perfect example. You apply Flex direction column to that specific Flex item. So now you've established a new Flex axis just within that element, and its children will stack vertically.
Whoa, it's like creating these mini layouts within the main layout.
Exactly. And because Flexbox is all about managing space and alignment, these nested layouts will just seamlessly integrate with your overall design. It's pretty slick.
I bet. Okay, but before we go too deep into these nested flex boxes.
Right, of course.
We've got to save some of the excitement for next time.
Exactly. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dig into how FlexWrap takes this whole adaptability thing to the next level. Don't go anywhere.
All right, so we're back, and I'm ready to hear all about this FlexWrap property.
Okay, so imagine this.
Okay.
You've got this row of navigation links all set up nice and neat with Flex direction, row.
Right.
But then the unexpected happens.
What's that?
The user's screen size, it shrinks,
Right.
or maybe they rotate their phone,
Right.
and suddenly...
Well, no, I know exactly what you're about to say. Those links, they either get, like, squeezed together, or even worse, they start spilling out of their container.
Instead of singing my song, it's a design disaster waiting to happen.
It's the worst.
But fear not.
Oh.
FlexWrap to the rescue.
Okay, tell me more.
It's like giving those Flex items permission to break free from that rigid row
Okay.
and just neatly wrap onto multiple lines when space gets tight.
So it's like saying, hey, no need to cram yourselves in there. Just find a comfy spot on the next line.
Exactly. FlexWrap gives you that control over how your layout responds to different screen sizes or if the content changes. It's like essential for responsive design.
Responsive design, music to my ears. But how does it actually work? What are my options for controlling the wrapping?
Well, you got a few options.
Hit me.
You got Now Wrap, which is the default.
Okay.
And then there's Wrap and Wrap Reverse.
All right, so now wrap, that's what like it sounds. Those items just stay on one line no matter how squished they get.
You got pretty much recipe for disaster on smaller screens.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Exactly. So that's why wrap is going to be your best friend here. It tells those flex items, go ahead, Wrap onto multiple lines when you need to. Nice and organized, flowing from top to bottom.
Okay, that makes sense. What about wrap reverse? Does that, like, change the direction of the wrap?
Yes, spot on. It wraps the items from bottom to top, which can be useful for some creative layouts, but you're right, wrap is going to be the go-to for most responsive situations.
Gotcha. So we've covered controlling the direction with flex direction and now this adaptability with flex wrap, but something tells me we're not done yet. What about spacing? How do we control how those items are spaced out within their container?
Getting into the finer details now.
Got to make it pixel perfect.
Exactly. That's where justify content comes into play.
Justify content. Okay, I've seen that one before.
Yeah.
But a refresher never hurts. So justify content. It lets you define how that space is distributed along the main axis. So are your items all clustered together at the start, spread out evenly? Justify content gives you all those options.
So if my main axis is a row, using flex direction, then justify content is controlling how those items are spaced out horizontally.
You got it. Think of it like, I don't know, hanging pictures on a wall.
Okay, I can visualize that.
Justify content is like having all these different strategies for how you arrange those pictures. Flex start, they're all lined to the left. Flex end clustered on the right.
And what if I want that like perfectly spaced out gallery wall look? You know, like those interior design
I
magazines?
know exactly what you mean. Space between, that's your new best friend.
Space between.
Yeah, it distributes the space evenly between the items, with the first item hugging the left edge and the last one snug against the right edge.
Ooh, I like everyone's got their own little breathing room, no awkward gaps.
Precisely. Now, if you wanted a bit of space on either end of the row as well,
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
space around is the way to go.
Space around.
Yep.
Mm.
Add space around each item, including the first and last ones.
Nice.
Gives you that nice open feel.
This is so much better than the old days of messing around with floats and margins.
Oh, I know, right?
So much cleaner.
Night and day.
Well, we've only talked about spacing along the main axis. What about the cross axis?
Excellent question. And that's where align items comes in.
Align items. Okay. Another one for the toolbox.
It's all coming together. But we'll dive into that right after a quick break, so stay tuned.
All right, back to align items. We were talking about how it gives us that control over the layout along the cross axis, right?
That's right.
So if I'm picturing my main axis as a row, does that mean align items is how I handle the vertical spacing?
It's like justify content is your horizontal spacing guru, right?
Right.
But align items, that's the master of all things vertical. When you're working with that horizontal main axis,
Okay, that makes sense. So what kind of control do we have here? Can I make elements like stretch to fill the whole container height?
Absolutely, align items. That's actually the default behavior.
Oh, really?
Yep. It's like,
Yeah.
like those friends who are always trying to match your height,
I know those friends.
no matter how tall or short you are. So yeah, unless you specify something else, those flex items will just stretch themselves vertically, try to match that tallest element in the row.
Interesting. Okay, so I can see how that would be super useful, keeping everything visually consistent.
Right.
But what if I don't want the elements to stretch? What if I want like more precise control over their vertical position?
Well, no problem. You've got options.
Mm-hmm.
Align items.
Mm-hmm.
Flex start that'll neatly align everything to the top of the container.
So like if I was stacking books all nice and tidy at the top of a shelf.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, you've got align items. Flex end aligns everything to the bottom, like, I don't know, those magnets on your fridge.
I was going to say like clothes crammed in a suitcase. But okay, fridge magnets. I like it.
There you go.
Okay, both good to know. But what about that classic, centered look? Can we do that with align items too?
Of course. Align items. Center. That's your go-to for that perfectly centered vertical alignment.
I love it when it's that easy. I'm starting to realize that Flexbox really does have an answer for everything.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty amazing.
So we've talked about the container properties, but what about the flex items themselves? Do they have any special powers we can play around with?
Absolutely. We already touched on how flex direction can be used for those nested layouts, but there's even more. Remember our analogy about flex items being like friends sharing space?
Of course. Much easier to remember than just abstract layout concepts.
Well, just like some friends are more flexible than others, flex items have these individual properties that determine how they grow or shrink within the container.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going with this.
And that's where flex grow and flex shrink come in.
Okay, yeah. These sound like they're going to be really handy for responsive design.
You got it. Think of flex grow as an element's like eagerness to fill up available space.
Mm.
A flex grow value of 1, that's like that friend who's always happy to take up more room on the couch, you know?
So the higher the flex grow value, the more the element will expand to fill any extra space in the container.
Exactly. And on the flip side, flex shrink,
Yeah.
that determines how willing an element is to, shrink down when space is getting tight.
So a higher flex shrink value means it's more likely to downsize itself so it doesn't overflow.
Precisely. By default, flex shrink is set to 1, so most elements are pretty chill about shrinking.
Yeah.
But you set that flex shrink to 0. It's like that stubborn friend who refuses to budge even if there's no more room.
I love it. It's like we can give each element its own little personality, let them negotiate how they want to coexist in the layout.
Right.
This is way more fun than I thought learning about layout could be, but I have a feeling there's still more to unpack here, Ray.
So you're good at this. There's one more flex item property that's essential for fine-tuning those designs, flex basis.
Okay, lay it on me. What does flex basis do?
So think of flex basis as like setting the initial size of an element before any growing or shrinking happens. It's like saying, okay, start at this size, and we'll see if you need to adjust from there.
So it's like giving each element a starting point before those flex grow and flex shrink calculations kick in.
You got it. And you could set flex basis using specific units like pixels or percentages, or you can use auto. And auto, that basically lets the element figure out its initial size based on its content.
Much control. This is incredible.
Right, but it gets even better.
Oh.
Flexbox has these handy shorthand properties just to streamline your code. Remember FlexFlow?
Oh, yeah. Combines flex direction and flex wrap, right?
Exactly. 2 superpowers for the price of 1.
Love it.
And then there's, the mother of all Flexbox shorthands, the flex property itself.
Okay, tell me everything.
All right, so Flex lets you combine Flex Grow, Flex Shrink, and Flex Basis all in one go.
No way. That's amazing. Instead of writing out each property one by one, I can just use flex.
Exactly. Like Flex 1, that's a super common way to just say, hey, be super flexible. Grow to fill that space.
Unleashing the full potential of Flexbox in one line of code.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Once you master that Flex shorthand, you can do so much with a handful of characters.
I'm ready to master it. This has been an incredible deep dive. We've gone from the basics, containers and items, all the way to these super powerful properties that give us so much control over our layouts.
I know, right? Flexbox is amazing.
Yeah.
The key takeaway here is Flexbox empowers you to create these dynamic, responsive layouts. They're going to look fantastic no matter what screen size someone's using.
Exactly. And the best part is there's always more to learn. Maybe our listeners will even discover new and innovative ways to use Flexbox that we haven't even thought of. That's what makes web development so exciting.
I totally agree. It's always evolving. Until next time.